This is where you will end up, with your family and friends crying as you're let out of the courtroom to serve the rest of your life in prison.
This is Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Loera, also known as El Chapo and El Rapido, who's facing multiple charges, including drug-related offenses and a murder conspiracy in New York, United States. His criminal journey began in the mid-1980s when he worked as a mid-level operative for the Sinaloa Cartel. He quickly gained a reputation for his speedy transport of drugs from Mexico to the United States, earning him the nickname El Rapido. After escaping from a Mexican prison in 2001 by hiding in a laundry cart, Guzman Loera formed a powerful alliance with Ismael Zambada Garcia, a fugitive co-defendant, becoming the preeminent leader of the Sinaloa Cartel.
Does he even have close to $13 billion?
He doesn't have $13 billion in his wallet, I can assure you, inside the MCC. But the government's been looking for his assets for so long they haven't found a penny. This is a fiction.
However, in 2016 he was recaptured, and the following year he was extradited to the United States to stand trial for his crimes. On February 12, 2019, Guzman Loera was found guilty by a federal jury after a 3-month trial. The evidence presented during the trial was compelling, with testimonies from 14 cooperating witnesses who were members of the Sinaloa Cartel.
Long road that led Chapo Guzman from the mountains of Sinaloa to the courthouse behind us today was paved with death, drugs, and destruction. But it ended today with justice.
While the magnitude of El Chapo's crimes was daunting, his courtroom behavior will leave you in disbelief. During the trial, the methods employed by Guzman Loera and his organization to transport narcotics into the United States were exposed. They utilized fishing boats, submarines, carbon fiber airplanes, trains with secret compartments, and even transnational underground tunnels. Once the drugs entered the United States, they were distributed to wholesale dealers in various cities across the country. El Chapo was sentenced to life imprisonment, plus an additional 30 years for being a principal leader of the Sinaloa Cartel. He was also ordered to pay a staggering $12.6 billion in forfeiture. El Chapo remained emotionless as his sentence was read. However shocking El Chapo's reaction to his sentence was, it doesn't compare to the case of George Geweld Thomas. Easily one of South Africa's most dangerous gang leaders, George Geweld Thomas is a name that instills fear in the hearts of civilians and rival gang members. The name Geweld means violence, and Thomas doesn't bear the name for fun. Other gang leaders might be orchestrating robberies or murders from their hideouts, but not Thomas. The fearsome gang leader orchestrated about 4 murders from inside the prison. Thomas faced more than 50 charges, including 7 murders, 3 attempted murders, unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition, racketeering, housebreaking with intent to rob, and robbery with aggravating circumstances, amidst other gang-related charges. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for each of the 7 murders he was charged with. Out of the 7 murders, Thomas personally pulled the trigger in 3 and planned the other 4 from his prison cell. However, he was not alone. 6 of his gang members were also sentenced to life imprisonment for their crimes. Some of these crimes were carried out under instruction from Thomas while he was in prison. The rest of the accused received sentences ranging from 12 to 25 years in prison. The arrest and conviction were part of the state's commitment to preventing organized crime and crushing gang activities. The state has been under the scourge of the 26s and 28s, 2 of the country's most vicious gangs. The trial began in 2010 and covered crimes the gangs committed between 1999 and 2010. The accused persons have more than 150 charges against them. Thomas wasn't feared for nothing. 12 people linked to the case, half of them state witnesses, have been murdered. It was not surprising then that the public gallery was cleared, leaving only journalists to allow terrified witnesses to testify. The witnesses, flanked by a bodyguard, told the court that the gangs have repeatedly tried to assassinate Curtis Esterhuizen, a gangster from the rival Clever Kids gang. It was after one of these shootings that Thomas was arrested. While he was in jail waiting to be sentenced, he made more than 30,000 calls giving orders to kill lots of people, including witnesses. Following testimonies from witnesses and a superabundance of evidence, Thomas and his cohorts were sent to prison. During the whole trial process, Thomas showed no remorse. In fact, he bore what seemed to be a smile on his face. However cold-hearted Thomas's crimes and courtroom reaction was, nothing could prepare you for the infamous case of Jorge Costilla Sanchez, also known as El Cos, who was facing charges for drug trafficking in Brownsville, Texas. El Cos was the leader of the Gulf Cartel and was considered one of the most wanted criminals by former Mexican President Felipe Calderón during his crackdown on drugs. Costilla was captured by Mexican forces in 2012. Upon his arrest, a display of gold-encrusted guns and jewelry was presented to the media. Before becoming the leader of the Gulf Cartel, Costilla had served as a police officer in Matamoros, a Mexican border town. He took over the cartel after the arrest of its former boss, Osiel Cárdenas. In 2015, he was extradited to the United States, where he faced charges related to drug trafficking. At the time of his arrest, the U.S. government had offered a $5 million reward for information leading to his capture. The Justice Department stated that the 51-year-old Costilla was responsible for trafficking around 10,000 kilograms of cocaine and 140,000 kilograms of marijuana to the United States. U.S. Attorney Jennifer B. Lowry expressed the importance of the case and the satisfaction of seeing justice served. Special Agent in Charge Daniel C. Camo of the Drug Enforcement Administration, Houston Division, praised the collaborative efforts with local and federal partners that led to Costilla's imprisonment, emphasizing the commitment to aggressively pursuing drug trafficking organizations and protecting communities. Costilla was sentenced to life in prison after entering a plea deal in September 2017. Interestingly, his sentencing coincided with Mexico's lower house voting to extend the policing powers of the country's army until 2028, a move aimed at addressing rising violence. Costilla might have been an ex-police officer. However, not all cartel leaders come from the side of the law, like the case of Abel Gallegos. When 28-year-old Simone Duran identified Alonso Quintana in a police lineup as a suspect during an investigation for attempted murder, little did she know that she was signing her death warrant. In retaliation for identifying him, Quintana, in connection with fellow gang members Abel Gallegos and Rene Rosales, lured her into a motel, kidnapped her, shot her multiple times, and killed her. As if this brutality was not enough, Rosales and Gallegos proceeded to pour gasoline on her corpse and set it ablaze. Following investigations, the murderous trio was arrested and charged to court with more than 30 witnesses testifying and an overload of evidence. Rene Francisco Rosales sentenced to more than 120 years in prison. Quintana, who the police identified as a chronic criminal, was sentenced to life imprisonment, plus 160 years without the possibility of parole. Like Rosales, this is Gallegos' sixth felony conviction, and he was on federal probation at the time of this murder. Abel Kendi Gallegos was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, plus an additional 163 years. During their sentencing, the judge expressed shock at such brutality. Still, Abel and his cohorts showed no remorse.
This is where you will end up, with your family and friends crying as you're let out of the courtroom to serve the rest of your life in prison.
However shocking you think Gallegos' case was, this wasn't the only time detectives managed to put a merciless killer behind bars. There was also the case of Lee Rios, who's facing charges for murder in Massachusetts, USA. In 2015, Lee Rios and Jonathan Guevara, both members of the Latin Kings street gang, murdered 18-year-old Kenneth Lopez in 2015. The murder was strictly ego-driven. Wait till you hear why Rios believed he had to kill Lopez.
Mr. Lopez lost his life because he had hit on Mr. Rios' ex-girlfriend and because he showed him disrespect.
Rios lured Lopez out of his house, where the two of them shared a cab, to the area where Lopez would ultimately lose his life. When the two arrived, they were met by 3 Latin Kings gang members. The Assistant District Attorney, Max Bennett, informed the court that Rios discharged a total of 5 shots, with 4 of them striking Lopez, including 2 shots to the head. As if his actions weren't terrible enough, Rios' behavior in court was less than desirable. He remained aloof and uninterested in the proceedings. Rios denied the charge in court when it was brought before Springfield District Court. Still, eventually, the case made its way to Hampton Superior Court for further proceedings. Rios was convicted of first-degree murder by a jury and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole.
Count 1. Jury having convicted you of murder in the first degree, sir, I am sentencing you to NCIC junction for the term of your life without the possibility of parole.
Rios' cold demeanor and lack of remorse shows that he is lost in the gangster life. If you thought these crimes were shocking, you'd be amazed at this video of convicts that argued with the judge.